What is going on, folks? Welcome back to the Squats and Sober Thoughts podcast. This is going to be the first ever bite-size edition version of the show. So, as you may have realized, one of my goals this year was to be consistent with the podcast, and I've done a pretty piss poor job of doing so. I have been able to recognize that I have been very, very busy between the new home, a very busy client load, actually the busiest client load I've ever had. I have given myself some grace and realized that as much as this is much more of a passion project, it is a great tool of self-reflection and self-expression for me as a whole. But I have not been prioritizing it because there's been lots in the go. So I'm at least much more understanding of myself and why I haven't been on the podcast as frequently and consistently as I may have liked. But with that being said, I would like to get back on here. So my goal with this is to do these quote unquote bite-size edition podcasts where they're going to be between 7 and 10 minutes long. Part of that reason being is that the idea of recording a 30 to 45-minute episode by myself right now seems incredibly daunting. And I like to tell my clients when they're struggling, whether it be with their nutrition, their workout consistency, or their lifestyle consistency, is just pick one. So the bigger barrier of entry, or the more resistance we have around the barrier of entry itself, the more likely we are to not actually doing anything that's conducive to our health and well-being. And so for me, the idea of a 30-minute podcast is way too daunting. So I'm going to do these 7 to 10-minute episodes, trying to keep myself within that time frame as best as possible. I do tend to go on some fucking tangents here. But I want to kind of play around with this idea. As you can see, if you're watching on YouTube, we painted the office. We got some nice little wall art from HomeSense. We kind of spruced up the place a little bit. And it kind of reinvigorated me to want to get back on here and talk on a more frequent basis. So part of what also prompted this was just going through a few things in life. Life be life in the last little bit here. And truth be told, since I have moved into the house in December, I've actually only seen my therapist, Stu, or psychologist, twice now. So I saw him in January, and then I actually hadn't seen him since up until this last Friday. This was twofold. One of which is, one, I've been very busy, which is a pretty weak excuse in my books because I wasn't prioritizing it. Two was I actually wanted to challenge myself and not rely so much on him for support when it comes to my sobriety, when it comes to my well-being, when it comes to just how I manage my day-to-day stressors and some of the bigger life things that I've gone through in the last couple months. And I think it was actually a very beneficial thing for me to do. I realized that I can maintain my sobriety without having Stu in my back pocket. And it's important because the reality is I can't have Stu with me on a 24-hour basis, 7 days a week, as much as sometimes I would like that, especially when I'm going through some heavy shit. It's just simply not feasible. And the reality is that when you're in the safe space of your therapist or psychologist office, it's easy to say you're going to do these things. And the hard part is actually following through with the things that you say you're going to do behind closed doors. And so I firstly want to acknowledge that I am incredibly proud of myself for being at around 8.5 months sober. I don't know the exact days, but celebrated 8 months sober. I think it was 2 weeks ago. So somewhere in that time frame, I'm incredibly fucking proud of myself for being able to stay on track with that. This is without a doubt the longest stint of sobriety I have ever had in my entire life. And the fact that I've done it without Stu in my back pocket for the last couple months actually just goes to show that I can do this. And it's something that I'm doing for me, and I'm not doing it for someone else. And I'm very proud of myself for recognizing that. Now, with that being said, I still have been doing my breath work once a month. I don't necessarily think of that as an aid in terms of support per se. I think of it just more as nervous system regulation at this point, and I've just become so accustomed to doing it on a once a month basis that I kind of fucking need to, otherwise I start going a little crazy. I can feel my agitation levels starting to rise up and just things like that. So from a somatic standpoint, I do find it very, very beneficial and almost necessary at this point. And I don't think that that's a bad thing. But what I want to tie in here is when you're really going through it, there's a time and a place where you need to test yourself and test your own capabilities about what you can do behind closed doors and what you are willing to do behind closed doors. What I really want to get across here is when you are really going through it, do not ever hesitate to reach out for help from the support that you do have, whether that be from your psychologist, your coach, your friends, your family members, your loved ones, anyone who you feel somewhat safe and confident with, to express that you're struggling. And it's just so important that we don't think of ourselves as weak in these moments, because we all need support. We all need help. We all need guidance. We all need a reframe, a shift in perspective, a shift in insight, whatever it may be. And when you're really going through it and your nervous system is jacked up and your cognitive self is jacked up and you just aren't thinking straight, it's so helpful to have that neutral third party to be able to reframe some of the things that you might be going through and just allow you to kind of get out of your own way. So this came up with a check-in this morning, actually, where a client of mine who typically when he's going through it, he tends to pull back. That's his coping mechanism, and that's totally fair. That's totally valid. But you can change your coping mechanisms. If I've changed mine over the years of alcohol and substance abuse and my own physical abuse to myself in many different ways, anyone can change, but you have to recognize that change is a possibility for you. And you're not weak for asking for help. Whether you're going through something with a relationship, whether you're going through something with a family member, a career change, a loss of career, whatever the fuck it is that you may be going through, you're not weak for asking for help, and you're not weak for asking for support. You're a human being, and as always with these podcasts, my goal is to always humanize myself as best as possible so that I never get thought of as being on this sort of pedestal as a coach, because I need help and I need support just as much as any one of you listening. And I just want to really reiterate the emphasis here of you are not weak for asking for help and support from your loved ones, your coaches, your psychologists, or anyone who you can actively ask and seek support from. So this is my first message to say that I'm doing well. As much as life be lifing right now, I do have a few things on the go that are pretty stressful. I'm doing well, and I've realized the importance of I can only take on so much by myself, and that when I'm going through these moments of what feels like weakness, when I want to give in and fuck up my sobriety, for lack of a better word, I need to reach out for support. And I'm proud of myself for recognizing that I needed that. And I'm proud of myself for actually taking the action step required, which was reaching out to book in with Stu in the first place. So hopefully you enjoyed this episode. If you're watching on YouTube, let me know what you think of The Office. Thank you very much to Ali for the dope paint recommendations and the dope recommendations when it came to the pictures from HomeSense. Color scheme looks fantastic, if I do say so myself. I don't think you can see it in the roof, but the roof is also painted black, so that's pretty cool. But if you're watching on YouTube, let me know what you think. Hopefully you enjoyed this episode, and I hope to see you on a much more frequent basis with these bite-sized podcasts. So if you're listening on Apple Music or Spotify, make sure to give this a like. Also, if you could, please give it a written 5-star review. It helps the channel and or podcast grow. And hopefully, with these bite-sized episodes, I can show up on a much more frequent basis. So, have a great rest of your day, folks.